what I'm going to show you is by default, when you install Maya, you end up with a couple of directories, or at least one. Essentially, it creates one project for you. So I'm going to close all this stuff. So, and this is PC. This is for the PC. For the Mac, it's pretty much the same if you're on a Mac. So if you know how in the File Explorer you always have documents, and then they have for every user that gets created on your machine, you get a documents folder, you get a music, and all these other things. But everybody gets a documents folder, right? And inside there's a Maya directory, right? And then inside there's a projects directory, and then there's a default. This is where everything gets dumped if you don't specify where your project is, or where your project is going to be stored, right? So anytime if you don't specify or don't change it, if you go to look for an autosave, if you have autosave on, it's going to be in here. If you saved a scene and you didn't directly say where you want it to be saved, it's gonna throw it here, et cetera, right? So this is the default project that Maya creates, and it's going to dump everything in there until you say, I want to switch my project, right? So if I go into Maya, or Mudbox, sorry, Maya, and I say open, since I'm in my default scenes, it's going to look in my name, documents, Maya, projects, default, scenes, okay? Nothing in there that we just saw, okay? But I also have a choice to switch my project over here, or remember we had set project over here. So I'm just going to set this manually. So I'm going to go in, and I made like I said, I made a project, this one, for today, okay? And it's got all the, it creates all these directories and everything, and it's got some assets in it. So if I go and I specify where to put that, class 22, choose that. There we go. Set that as my project. Now when I say open scene, it's going to look in those files, okay? It's going to look in that directory, because now we've set everything to, this is the name of the project, and the default place to look for that is scenes, okay? So like I was saying last week, is if you keep your things organized and you keep things in projects, you won't lose them, and the links to them won't get lost either. Because if you do mapping, but you put the final map over here, in some other directory or on your desktop or something like that, and it breaks, you have to either go point to that specifically in Hypershade, or you just got to sort of, you got to move it to where it should be, right? So anyways, so since I've created this, it puts me right where I want to be, right, looking for scenes, and if I was in Hypershade and I went looking for a texture, or dumped it, and I want to make a new texture, new textures, a file, I click on file. The first place it's going to want to look, the name of the project, source images. So these are all the source images that I put in this directory for today. So, I think you see, like why you want these things to get, why you want to sweep all these things together and work out of these directories. Because I could give you this directory, you could open it up on your machine, and all the things would connect, and everything would be in there, and nothing would get lost, okay? So this is the way it's supposed to function. Like I said, why it gave me a hard time last week, I don't know, but this is the way it's supposed to function. All things, where they should be. So like, even if I went to render setup, right? So automatically it's putting it in images. If I rendered an image and it was going to be saved, it's going to go into images in the current project, right? So all these things sort of just get pre-wired in your project, and you don't that way you don't have to mess with them. You don't have to, none of those problems, and you can also put anything you want in there, like you can, like in source images, they actually put a 3D Paint textures directory in there, where you could put your Mudbox files in there, or whatever you want. It's not hard and fast. You can actually even rename them as they get made if you wanted to, in the project window, right? If you don't like the name, like if templates, if you don't like the name assets for templates, rename it something else. Source images, you could call it, you know, if you made a new one, you could call it textures, just to make life, you know, make it simpler to yourself. So, like I said, it's just a way to keep things together, not get assets lost, and just stay organized basically, and also allow you to hand things off to people, including like when you have to hand in assignments. You know, if I went here and I zipped this up, everything would be in there, and if I opened it up, everything would be connected, even if it's on a different machine. Okay, because these are all these links to other textures all depend on making, as long as it's in this directory, you know, the name of this directory and source images, it's going to find it. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so like I said, that's the way it's supposed to work, not what happened on Monday when all of a sudden it didn't want to do this and it didn't want to do that and all that crap. So this is the way, you know, that's the way that it's supposed to work. So now I'm in that directory. Okay, so if I open up what I wanted to talk about today, so like I said, the first thing I want to talk about is well, let me back up, actually. So we talked a couple weeks ago. I asked who knew Photoshop, and some people did and some people didn't. And you know what I want to talk about, just real briefly, is once again we don't have time for a you know, sort of a intro to, you know, Photoshop class really here. But the thing that I want to talk about is just the it's alpha channels. Okay, what alpha channel means is, you know, I talked a while back about how images are just made out of red, green, you know, combinations of red, green, and blue values, right? And when you combine those three, that's when you get a color image. You know, like that's all it is just combinations of red, green, and blue for the most part in an RGB image like this, right? But also, and also the way that those values, even though it's called a color, it's actually just sort of black and white. Like if I come in here and I paint black in the red channel, okay, so it's all white. And if I paint green in this direction, or the opposite of green, and I paint blue through all three of them, the actual resulting image is this. So it's like, meaning, actually, let me clean this out. Let me do it backwards. Or I did it backwards. So if I come into the red channel and I paint white, meaning, you know, so if this was black in the background, oops, delete, oops. Okay, and hello, paint a stripe of white, channel.
Is it because you have no background?
No, I have a channel to paint on. Let's try it again. No. Okay. So I'm just clearing this out real quick to black. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now I can paint white. So, okay, so in the channels area, so these are the channels of the image, right? Okay, red, green, and blue, just like like when we plug a texture over in, you know, into anything in Maya, you see RGB, you know, RGB value, and you see also an A value, right? So, like I said, in each channel, it's actually just black and white combined together. So this is saying how much red to throw into this, and by going into green, how much green to combine with that, and how much blue to combine with that. So when you combine all three of those, you get white. So blue, you know, obviously blue plus red equals this purple, green plus red equals this sort of yellow, and then, but in the middle where they all combine, you get this, you get white, in when it's all combined together to make RGB. Okay, so on top of that, you can add at least another, you know, at least in most image types, you can add, not most, I shouldn't say that, sorry. In PNG and a couple other file types, you can add an alpha channel. And an alpha channel is just a stencil, basically, right? So if I come in here and I click there, you see I get an alpha, okay? So the alpha is literally just, once again, just like in like if you were gonna spray paint on something, and you made literally a stencil out of a of a piece of paper, and you're gonna paint through it. That's exactly what the channel is. So by default, when it's black, it's not going to the color isn't gonna come through, and where it's white, it will come through. Okay, so if I come in and I paint on my alpha channel, oops, X there, it's gonna show through. Okay, so even though there's color there, I'm only where I paint in there would be what shows up because I have an alpha channel. Okay, so that means this is essentially how it would sort of work. If I came over here to my layers and I cut that out, okay, oops, wrong way, invert, cut that out. So what that means is now if I have another layer underneath that, okay, it's going to, you get a color that'll show up, purple, we'll say. It's going to composite over the top of it, just like a stencil, okay? So that, so that means that I can start building up layers, okay? So whenever you see checkerboards, that means this is transparent, okay? So if you were going to take this, and we'll take something similar and put it on an object, whatever your surface is that's underneath it, this is going to stick it on top like a sticker. I mean, it's like, think of a plastic sticker that is mostly transparent. It just has some color on it, right? So let me just clear these out. All right, so a perfect example is text. Like if you needed to put text on something, oops, text, okay, and if you save that out, if you then had a surface underneath it, it would just composite it right on top, okay? And that's the point of the alpha channel, is to give whatever program they're using a guide on how to put the things on top, how to put things on top of each other, because you can sort of infinitely layer these kind of things, so an alpha channel allows you to do that. So JPEGs don't have an alpha channel, so don't save your images as a JPEG. BMPs, just these kind of things. For right now, until somebody sort of tells you different, just save things in PNGs, and you can't go wrong. Okay, it's not a compressed, very compressed format. It supports these alpha channels to allow you to do different stuff. So a good example. So let's see. I made source images. Oops. Okay, so you'll see if I open this up, see how this is checkerboard in the background. That's not really there, okay, because it's an alpha channel, right? That's just Photoshop's way of showing you what is going to be behind there. So this is, if I have a surface underneath it, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to composite it right on top, okay, at render time. All right. So so what? Well, I'll show you. So when you have these channels available to you, what we can do is, so by default, when I create this cylinder, I get these UVs, okay, which are pretty nice, pretty decent. So if I create a surface, oops, I guess I already did. So I'll start over. I'll create a new surface. I'm gonna pause this. Okay. So I'm gonna grab Arnold standard surface shader, and I'm gonna by default I'm just gonna put a file in called I think not that one, this concrete. Okay, so if I put this concrete on there, it's gonna use, by default, it's gonna use these UVs, right? And let me assign it to this cylinder there. So that's great. Since we already have UVs, it already knows how to put it on the object. And let me just make it not so shiny. Why is Tia?
Yeah.
Do you know why the other door doesn't open?
It's because all the staff left other than you,
Oh.
and they have to close the whole office when they.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So so we've got this mapped on there, and you know we ran into this with like the TV, and that when I say open the UV set editor, you see you know it already had a couple of sets of UVs, right? And we're gonna talk about why you would want that, right? So by default, it's just gonna go and use UV set number 1 and wrap it around there and wrap it around the top, and everything's great, right? Well, what if I needed to put, you know, a logo or something right here, okay? And I didn't want it on the top, and I didn't want to upset my, you know, I didn't want to redo the UVs and all that stuff. That's where using another channel would come in handy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open Hypershade. Okay. And I'm gonna grab another file, like so. Oops, sorry, layer. So I'm gonna use the layer texture node, right? Okay. So I have two file nodes. I have my concrete, which I'm gonna call file concrete, and I'm gonna call this one file logo. Okay, so here we're not mixing surfaces, we're mixing textures, right? So notice here there's a layered layered shader and a layered texture node. They're two different things. You know, in this instance, we already have our shader, and we're not going to be concerned about like the different pieces of the map being different shaders, just different colors, right? So that's why we would use a map layer texture shader, right? So I'm just going to wire this up. Base color, then I'm going to take these guys. So the texture layer texture is pretty cool in that by default there's just one layer, okay? But the more I click out here, I just get new layers. So you could keep adding these things into here until, you know, you run out of space, I guess, right? So, you know, if you want to get complicated, there's nothing stopping you from going, you know, click, 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 and you just have to handle how all those go together. But right now we're just going to deal with two. So if you click the button underneath, it deletes them, and just clicking in this empty space creates them, okay? So if I come down here, I got two inputs, okay? So I've got color. I'm going to put it into the input 01, color input, or sorry, input 0, and then input 1, and then the alpha channel that we just talked about, I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to put that one in there. Okay, so now we've wired up the concrete as a sort of our base layer, and we've wired up the logo, which I haven't pointed to yet, as the second layer, okay? So now I'm going to go point to that. So if I open it up, you see, notice it goes right to my project directory, source images, everything's, you know, where I want it to be. I'm going to go get my logo. So another a good way to know if you have an alpha channel, when you click on the preview here, if it stays gray like this, notice how, you know, if, you know, an object, or sorry, if a texture, you know, fills out the whole screen, then obviously, you know, it doesn't. Like, let me try and find one that might have it that doesn't. Well, okay. Basically, like, if you see that, what it's doing is it's actually just sort of compositing it over this gray right here. So if this background stays gray, you probably have an alpha channel, and this is how it's going to put it on there, right? So let me go see if, nah, forget it. So I'm just going to use this one. So this has an alpha channel. So if I open it up in Photoshop, you can sort of see it there, but you can really see it here. So if I come over, or, you know, you see like that it's got no background, okay? It's got that checkerboard background. That means that it's semi-transparent, or, you know, transparent in those areas, okay? Also keep in mind that alpha channels can also be feathered out, meaning that they're not just, you know, off or on. Like, if you want something to blend in, it can blend in on the edges. You know, like if you wanted to take you know, some kind of a, you know, a patch of some sort, you know, like say I wanted just a patch of blue, on something, okay, but I wanted to feather it out. Like if you go like this, it would put it on the object with this nice feather, okay. So you know, it's a full-on black to white image, not just black or white. It's not off or on, you know. So things can be sort of gracefully composited on top of each other, okay. So over here now I have my logo, okay, and I got my concrete, I got my logo. They're both going into the layer texture node here, and then the output of that guy is going to the shader, right? Which I'll unpause and see if we get something. Okay. So if you need, these also, they composite each other from left to right. So the first, see where it says file logo? I can't zoom in here, but it says file logo. That's actually under the concrete, and since the concrete doesn't have an alpha channel, there's nothing to see through. It's basically covering it up, right? So if I click on it, click on my the logo node, and I drag it using my middle mouse button to the other side. There we go. So it's compositing it over the top. You can also say alpha is luminance, which will composite over the top. So now I have both concrete with the concrete with the logo over the top of it. Okay. So did I get these right? Let's see.
Andy, quick question.
Sure.
So if you were to just connect a concrete and a logo just straight to your surface, it would still show up, just not layers? Or
Absolutely, right. Exactly. Like, yeah, like when we started, we had this. So we had just the concrete. Oh, crap. Hold on. So this is where I don't start getting, I don't get updates properly. So if you click on the surface, what we initially had was just this. Yeah, so to be able to composite the two together, we have to use the layer texture node to try and sort of bolt these guys together. That's the concept. So the color out of there goes in the back into the base of my surface. Okay. So we use our color. Did I get these right? Color. Yes, okay, so color. There we go, over. There we go. Okay, so now if you look close, I have concrete with the logo over the top of it, right? So now what I get in the problem is what I get in the viewport is this, because it's just using one set of UVs. All it knows to do is basically bolt, you know, like the concrete looks good because of how the UVs are laid out, but the logo doesn't, and you see how it's mapping it to that. So this is exactly where you would want another set of UVs, right? So that you can control where that goes, okay? So if we keep our original UV set, map 01, I tell you what, we'll rename it just to save ourselves just confusing, call it map concrete. So those are the UVs for the concrete, and we create a new set called map logo. Now we can start dictating how those, how that gets, how the logo gets put on the object, because we'll have two different sets here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just put it on part of the object. Okay, so you notice when I went into UV set editor, UV set editor, my UVs for the main body went away, right? So there's one's for concrete and one's for logo. There are none for logo, so that's what we're going to do here, okay? I think you can even leave this open, but if you really wanted to. So I'm actually just going to put the goal here is just to put the logo right here. So leave the concrete behind and make the logo go on this little chunk. So I'm going to grab these faces, just grab a little subset here. So this trick works really well, in particular, like if you, when you're trying to put something on top of a procedural, remember, like a procedural, like the noise or that, even that fabric texture and all those things, those are all created at render time, right? So you don't, there's nothing for you to paint on top of or anything like that, right? So you could use those procedurals, but then put a map like this on top of it, using another set of UVs. Okay. So all right. So so I'm in my map logo UV set. Okay, and I'm selected some faces that I'm gonna map. Okay, and I'm just gonna do probably best face, because they almost just best plane. Sorry, because they pretty much just face this direction. Okay, so oops, gotta redo it. Select. So I don't get stretching. I'm trying to grab just a few the faces that would make this up. Because it is almost sort of stretched like this. Okay, so I didn't grab an exact square. Maybe a little more. I can always fix these. Hit enter, and there we go. So, no, I don't like that. So we'll just do planar. There we go. That's better. So okay, and then Q. So what we have in this set, when I select this object, is just these guys mapped, and everybody else mapped to nothing. Okay, so we do have a couple of shells. We have this shell, and then we have the outer shell. Since we're not concerned with the outer shell, we're not going to map it. So we just did this one set of faces. Okay. Now, this is the tricky part, and this is just the way that it has to be right now. But so you've got everything set up, in that you have a logo that goes over the top of the concrete using your main UV set, okay, the first one, okay, and then you have another UV set that we just created just for some faces, because we're just trying to get this guy to be on that area, right, in composite over the top. Okay, so you would think, sadly to say, you would think that they sort of have a little bit of an easier way to do this, especially in the UV nodes, but they don't. So what we're going to do is we're going to go get a relationship editor. Okay, and I would definitely make a note of this one. So relationship, they have a whole bunch of different kind of relationships, and remember we've talked about how Maya is node based, meaning like everything's just a little node and they're all wired up together. So a lot of these relationship editors are just ways to show you how to sort of wire things together and make those connections, right? So one of our options down here in the relationship editors, UV linking, is a thing called UV centric. And what that's going to do, especially if I click the object first, UV centric, it's just going to bring up this little window here. And what it's showing you, and it may look more complicated than it is, but so on one side you have your UV sets, on one side you have your textures on the current object. Okay, so it's just saying what UVs do you want me to use for what texture, right? By default, when I click on that, see how it says file logo. Remember that's referring to this file logo and file concrete JPEG. Well, anyways, file logo and file concrete. Okay, so when I select I don't know if you can see them, it's kind of small, but it says map concrete. That's our map set that we see right here, UV set editor. Okay, and then we see our other one, map logo. That's the ones we just made. So all I have to do to change this is select map logo, and that's once again the new set of UVs, and just click on file logo on the other side. All this is doing is telling Maya, this is how I want these put on there. Okay, and you'll see it immediately changes. Okay, so now if I click on map concrete, it's only connected to file concrete, map logo connected to file logo. And like I said, what that's referring to is your UV sets and the name of your file, your textures that you sort of that need direction from you. So you could have 30 of these. You could have a whole bunch of different types or different maps that you're putting on there in all different kind of ways, as long as you come in here and you wire them properly. So all you have to do is click on there and it's going to wire it up. So you can do multiples. Like now it's back to where it was. Oh no, sorry, this is actually now both maps are mapped or using just map logo mapping, and then this is where it started out. Okay, so it's not that hard really. It's just you just got to know how to get at it. But just they always put it at the top here. There's always what you're connecting to what, and vice versa. Okay, so all you got to do, main logo, file logo, and there we go. and it's backwards, which is a treat. So let me just find, let's see, flip, whoop, there we go, boom. And maybe they're a little, oops. Oops. There we go. So once again, that gives Maya, that tells Maya how you want that mapped on there. So by not mapping the rest of the object, nothing's going to get mapped on there, okay? Because it's basically just going to assume that it's, just use the bottom pixel right here and just skip it, right? So
why did it mess up the text? Sorry. It says the great UV nightmare, and then in model it says something completely different.
oh yeah, because that's so this is a good example of when we talked about tiling. If I come over here and I say wrap, okay, that should, there we go, that stopped that. Wrap, remember, if wrap is on, it's going to basically treat your texture like wallpaper, okay? If you turn that off, it's just going to put it on there once like a decal. So if I come back over here, I unwrap, or I turn off wrap, now it's like a decal. So I can shrink it, I can do whatever I need to do with it. This is, once again, that's a good example of why you would want to do that. So it's oddly put on there, but so yeah, that's the idea. So like I said, you can add as many of these as you want. I'm sure there's a upper limit or a memory limit or something like that, but this is a way to combine both procedurals and things like text, or things that have to be on there like stickers, or like a t-shirt would be a good example, where you have a bunch of fabric that you're putting on there, but you want to put something on the front of the t-shirt. You could design that and put it right on there without having to mirror it to the fabric layer. The fabric layer. Okay. So does anybody have any questions on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The background of the great UV nightmare thing is an alpha channel. Why do we see like a little blur like blocking the rest of the texture?
It may, hopefully it's just, let's see if I render it, if I still get that. Hopefully that's just a viewport error. Other than that, it may just, hold on, let me find out. Okay. Because what you see in the viewport isn't necessarily obviously what you're going to get out of the renderer. It's just trying to approximate what it thinks it's going to look like. So sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's wrong. So, but it could be a valid issue. Let's see. Turned out. There it goes. Yeah, so it's just a it's just because of the viewport. It's just approximating, and what it when it's putting alpha channels together, it's using like a slightly different math or something like that. So it's something to watch, but I would definitely not always trust what you see in the viewport, because it doesn't necessarily show up that way. So the cool, once again, so the cool thing about this, for starters, is that this is, these two things are separate from each other. So it's like when I rendered it, I noticed this was really the granite or the concrete didn't look that, it looked pixelated when we rendered it when we came in here, right? So if you put these two things together, meaning like if you painted them on top of each other, it's going to stay that way, right? Well, instead, if I come in here and I do a repeat, if I have a repeatable texture, like this concrete isn't necessarily repeatable, but if it was, then, so you see my texture changes behind the object, but the sticker or the whatever you want to call it, the logo on top stays right where it's at. So keeping these things separate is, you know, there's a lot of great advantages. You know, it makes it a lot easier. If all of a sudden this logo changed, I could go over and I could remake the logo. Everything stays the same. You know, it's awesome. So that's great. So all right. So that's layered textures. Okay. And in a similar fashion, you have layered materials. Now, once again, layered materials are exactly what you would think. They're you know, when you need two completely different materials, you know, on the same object, you know, you want them to sort of behave differently, you know, instead of just sort of painting a map to, you know, control certain aspects of your surface, after a while, it just doesn't become, it doesn't make sense, you know. So like a good example is like on the TV a couple of weeks ago, they had, you know, we had our dial, right? And you had, you know, meaning the channel changer thing, right? And it had, you know, the numbers that went around, right? So traditionally, like, you know, those things are made, it's like a piece of plastic that's like covered in like a plastic chrome stuff, and then numbers are painted on top of it, right? So the numbers are, they're paint, you know, the underneath is chrome plastic, right? So if you don't have separate objects, meaning like you don't have the knob, then the numbers as separate objects, a two-part or a layered material is a perfect place for this, because you get, like I said, you have a very shiny plastic, but then you have paint going over the top of it, right? So you could design that paint, and then you could design the shiny plastic, and then just layer them together using a layered texture. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do actually with this. So what we're going to do here is say, okay, well, you know, we have our concrete pillar here or whatever, right? Then we have our logo, right? Well, since they're both using the same surface, I'm getting the same amounts of shininess and all that stuff from them, and you know, it doesn't necessarily, that's not what I want. Say I wanted to say this was gloss paint, right? You know, I could take this and try and, like, you know, push the values into you know, the surface and stuff like that, but just for this exercise, I'm going to basically make a multi-layered surface. So what we're going to do is we're going to chip this guy. We're going to take our logo. We're actually going to get rid of our layered texture, and we're going to plug the color of the concrete back into the surface. So we are back with our concrete. And we're going to make a new shader, standard surface. And I'm going to call this one pillar paint. Okay. And I'm just gonna go in and I'm going to make it, I'll go back to Arnold shader. Oh, while it does that, I'm just gonna color it like a red, and it's shiny, so that's, oh wait, there it goes. Okay, so I have this red paint, maybe it's even less rough, but not as shiny. I'm going to turn the index refraction down. So I'm going to call this my paint. Maybe, actually, I'll just make it blue. So it's kind of a bright blue, okay? So now we have two surfaces here. We have concrete, which should come up. Oops, no. There, we got our paint, and then we got our concrete. Okay, concrete being, you know, really diffuse, you know, doesn't have a lot of shine going on it, whereas our paint does. Okay, so what we're gonna do to layer these two is come in and get our, I think no, use the regular one. So I'm gonna get my layered shader. So you just click on that guy. And it's very similar. The nice thing is it's very similar to the layer texture one, where I can create multiple layers of shaders if I want to, by just clicking to the side in this area, okay, and then clicking to get rid of them down there. So I got two shaders that I want to plug in here, and if I go like so, all right. There they are. Okay, input 1 and input 2. So all I have to do is take my color. So here's my paint. Okay, color out, of there into color 01, or input 01 color. Same deal over here, color input, input 1 is going to be the underlying surface. So if I roll over here, whoops, I roll over my layered shader. Here it goes. Damn it. So if I click on these guys, standard surface. Oh, I didn't name my thing. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to name my surfaces AI concrete. Okay. Pillar paint. Okay, I already did that. So we come over here. So pillar paint is on top of concrete. Remember, they composite left to right, or sorry, right to left for some reason. So this is technically the top, and you know, it's just, oops, it's kind of, that's the way that it is, right? Okay, so for transparency, all you have to do, remember, we already have this, we already have a texture loaded that the logo loaded over here. So we're going to use that as our mixer. Okay, so I'm going to move these, oops, I'm going to move them away from each other. Put this down here. So okay, so if I let this go, by default, I should get whatever the top layer is, which is just the paint, okay? And I'm only getting that because we haven't specified how we want that to be mixed together, right? You know, by default, this paint and this concrete have no, you know, alpha channel information, no transparency information. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get it from this other node, okay? So you'll see here, so input 1, which is our plastic or paint, okay? It has a transparency channel here, just, you know, waiting to be plugged into, right? So all I got to do is go, and this is my logo, grab one of the channels. It doesn't matter. Wait, yes, it does. No, I'm going to grab the alpha channel out of that guy. Sorry about that. Grab the alpha channel, plug that into the transparency here, and there. And there we go. So now, when you come in here, I'm going to zoom in. We should get shininess on... Oh, shit. Sorry. I wanted to plug that into... No, wait. Transparency. Is that the right channel? Yes. Hold on one second here.
Is it just inverted?
Yeah,
Like
that's what I'm wondering.
It's the transparency is what's built in, not the actual, like it's the opposite of the alpha channel.
Yeah, let me unplug this and see if I get... Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. So, shader, input. There it goes. Oops. Okay. So out color into my new, my new layer. Ooh. Pause this. So concrete, color, transparency. Concrete, pillar. Okay. Now, let's see how she renders. Okay. Uh-oh. What am I doing wrong here? So, got color. Getting my color from my paint. One second. RGB, right? You know what? I wonder if I could get away with taking one of these channels and plugging it into the opacity. It doesn't seem to be passing it through properly, so paint, concrete. Have to. Yikes. I think I blew this. No, let me try it again. So layered shader, add another channel, open up my inputs. Oops. Okay, there are the inputs 1 and 2. So RGB color out of the paint into color of the first channel. To color of the first channel. A 1 from my concrete color to color. Let's double check there on. So concrete underneath, pillar paint on top. Oh, I paused it. Damn it. Whoa. So that's even worse. Wow. Color. Right. No, we haven't. Well. Well, that's how this is supposed to work, but it is not doing it today. I'm going to try and get rid of the extra channels. So let me just try and build it one by one. See if we can get it to behave. So I'm going to pause it. Stop. RGB color into color of the first channel. Unpause. Nothing. Oh, wait a second. I know. Yeah. That's what it is. Extra. Where did I turn up my transparency? Sorry, guys. Matt. There it is, opacity. Right? No, geometry. There it is, opacity. Jeez. So what I did by plugging the opacity in there, when I disconnected it, everything went to 0. So I kind of got screwed there. So I'm gonna try and plug that back in. This will help composite together. There we go. No, wait a second. That's what it is. Red. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So what I did is I took the alpha channel. Remember the black and white information from the map. This guy the decal or whatever, right? So remember the black and white information just looks like this, right? So by pushing that into my opacity 3 times, I basically make a mask out of that, okay? Because I want to just control this surface with this map's alpha channel, okay? So we're leaving the color information behind. We're just taking the alpha channel out of it. So this should help the layered shader understand how to add it on top of the concrete, okay? So I'm going to pause it. I'm going to add another channel here. Okay. You got to refresh this thing. There we go. So input 5 and input 6. So base color coming out of, here's the concrete color there. So transparency. There it is, out transparency. So the out transparency of the paint, okay, which is going to be what I did over here. Okay, I'm going to also plug that in to the layered shader and let that go, and I don't get what I was looking for. Well, if it's any consolation, it worked at home. I know it's not at all, but No, you know, it's interesting. It's like it's showing it correctly up here. So there's the there it is on the object, but when at render time it's not behaving properly. Let's check our.
Does that does Maya treat like the layered shader is like a separate texture, I guess, or material? Like is that something that shows up on the materials list now? Like, is that up there?
Yes, I mean this is the layered shader. Why it's putting. For some reason it's using the transparency is going all the way through. It's passing the transparency that I was using over here through the object, even though I'm not. Ooh. You can see how awesome these are. You definitely want to use these. They're great. But I mean, in general, I'm not exactly sure why it's pulling the transparency only from the one object and also applying it to the concrete. You know, we should have concrete that's solid as a layer down here. You know, with no transparency.
Do you think it'd make a difference since there's no alpha channel on the concrete to just plug that in anyway?
Well, if I supplied one, then it's going to say, you know, okay, great. Like it's going to use that to you know to cause some of the concrete to be transparent. So by turning it off. See, I'm not getting updates again. Oh, wait. Okay, so there's that. Let me try plugging it in again. So there's my concrete. I have two layers. Pause. Color. Color. Boom. Boom. Okay. Paint on top. Clips both. Oh, you rat bastard. Welcome to the humiliating world of Maya. Okay. So there's no real reason for it to be passing that on, and it, I don't know why that it is. So I'm going to try and unplug it over here. I'm going to try and unplug it from the texture as opacity, because it must, what it does is must take whatever you pass as opacity through the object. So what I'm going to do is I'll just take the red channel and use it as transparency for the paint color again. So I'm just going to take the red, and I'll take the alpha channel. Alpha, plug it into all channels. This kind of worked before. Mix. You know what might be going on here? Hold on one second. So I'm using the layered shader. This is a Maya built-in shader. Arnold maybe Arnold doesn't play nice with this this thing, and you should use the mix shader instead. So this is the one if you're using regular, or at least previously, this is one if you're using the other renderer and any other kind of renderer in Maya. Maybe it doesn't play nice again with Arnold. So I'm going to pull up the Arnold mix shader. Actually, let's. Yeah, in fact, this one's a lot simpler. So I'll just take shader 1, or shader 1 is my concrete, shader 2 being my paint, and you see this one's a lot simpler in that it just has a mix weight, so I can take a black and white image of any type, or oops, oh no, it actually wants a color. The fuck. There we go. Oops. Alpha. Mix. There we go. So there we go. That's exactly what I wanted to do. So yeah. So anyway, so in previous other renderers, so this is an instance where Maya's default layered shader does not like Arnold. So the Arnold people wrote a new one. So mix shader and layer shader are the same thing essentially in Maya. So now you see what I'm getting. I'm getting shiny paint on top of my concrete. So this is what I wanted to get in the first place. Sorry about that, you guys. So that, you know, once again, this is why new renders, even though they're cool, being bolted into Maya, you know, they're great, but they can cause problems like this where things that you relied on previously all of a sudden don't work and you don't know why. So you can see what's going on here. We have, you know, like I said, we got nice diffuse concrete, but also we have this nice nice paint going on. Okay, so hopefully it'll render. Let's see. What face is it on there? Okay, map concrete. Where's my UV sets? And let's see. And so we have map concrete onto file concrete and map logo onto come on. Oof. Okay, so I'm going to select my map. And that. Okay, so file concrete logo. Show all. So it's showing me my maps, but on my concrete. Here we go. Boom. Lost the link to my to this guy. Let's see if concrete. Oh hell, I don't know. I'll have to figure this one out. So it doesn't want, for some reason, it's not showing me both of my my sets, my logo set. Oh wait, did I have to? UV centric, concrete. Oh no, I lost my logo map logo to color. Huh. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to figure out why I lost my linkage to the second UVs to tell it where to put the logo on there. So I'll have to dig into that. I don't know. So anyways, but that's the basic gist of it. So you use the mix shader, not the layered shader. That was my bad. So it's actually a lot simpler, which is really nice. It's just basically shader, and then how you want them to mix together in black and white. If you wanted to do another one, you just take the output of this and pump it into there and add another one. It doesn't do more than 2 channels. So just just use it that way. And that's the basic gist of mixing those two. So if I want to take these two, like I said, and put them in another one, I just add another mix, and you just take the output of this guy, put it into that one, and add in your next layer, and you just basically chain those together until until you're done, or until you've got as much that you want on there. Let me try one more second to see if I can fix this linking issue here. So object, that mesh, Relationship editors, UV linking, UV centric. Oh, concrete. Huh. Weird. Well, I'll have to look into that one. Yeah, that one's a puzzler. I don't understand what's going on there. But so anyways, at least for now, the idea is that using the relationship editor and the UV centric will allow you to at least mix multiple textures and place them on an object in different ways, and the mix shader will allow you to take different shaders and put them together in whatever way you'd like, basically. Okay. So there's one other. So the other thing I wanted to run through, because I know nobody watched, or almost nobody watched the video about the Cool tool. Thank you. The bonus tool about UV editing. I'm going to go through just a really basic sort of pelting map scenario, because a lot of these tools we've gone through, but I just want to show you how to use them in a different way. Or how you would use them in a different way for a more organic object, okay? So for this, I have this, oops, nope. Which one is this? Damn it. I brought in I found this cool-ish, the hell's my layers? Hello, layers. There they are. So I got this dragon model here, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through, so I talked a little bit about this auto unwrap thing, and it's kind of cool, but you can also do it manually, pretty much, well, not just as easily, but fairly quickly, and I'll show you how. Okay, so like I said, what we've talked about up until this point about UVs is a lot of hard object, like the Lego guy, where you're trying to sort of put things right on there. But what if you have a whole person or a dragon like this with all these pieces and all these kind of bits and chunks, right? And I talked last week about how essentially what you're trying to do is splay every bit of it out, and try and find ways to cut it apart and lay it out so that the most logical pieces are sort of exposed, right? And those logical pieces usually being, planes, tubes, sometimes spheres, or squares, okay? And any object that you break down like that will be able to be mapped very nicely, right? So, with the pelting map, with the automatic mapping thing, what you're essentially doing is going through ahead of time and saying, I want to cut along here, or I want to cut along there, and you lay out all these little cuts that you want to do, and then you let it do its thing, and it is essentially doing unfold for you, and then doing a layout for you, right? So, that's great. It's kind of cool. It does a decent job or whatever. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through most of this manually, just so that you can sort of see the process, okay? And once again, this applies to any organic object like this. Like obviously there's, if you mapped it just from the top, that the surface is going to go through the legs and all that stuff. This object has to be torn apart, and you want to tear it apart in a pretty decent way, so that you could paint it very well, or like you could get at all the little bits, and you could put lots of detail in the map. Okay, so the simplest way, honestly, right out of the gate, is just to essentially throw UV coordinates on it. Just do this, okay, and that means that we've got UV coordinates at least on the whole thing, right? And they're crappy. They would go right through the object and everything, but we have a start. So what we can do is essentially just come in and start looking for places to chop apart and unfold. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my symmetry on along the X to try and, if I do a cut here, I want it to match on the other side. So this thing is pretty symmetrical, if not completely symmetrical. Okay. So, like I said, if you just go in and start looking for planes and cylinders, you can just start chopping those out and start getting that going, right? So the neck is obviously just a big long cylinder, right? So, you know, if I say, well, I'm gonna chop maybe we'll just make things clean. I'll chop all the way around here so that I can chop my arm off, right? So this is just a big cylinder, right? So I'm gonna come over here, cut. So now I've just made a cut there, and I'm gonna cut the head off separately so that it can be detailed. And remember also, the head is probably something you're going to want to put extra detail in so that you can do this kind of thing. So by cutting that off, you allow yourself the ability to you know, give it more of the map or whatever. Cut there. I'm going to cut here down to there. So now you see what I've got is I've got a cylinder that wraps around over to here. So if I go back into shell mode, okay, and I come down to unfold, there you go. You know, that's pretty decent. You know, that everything's exposed and it's wrapped. You know, it's completely unwrapped. You can just put it off to the side, right? You know, so then you just keep doing the same thing, just looking for those primitives, okay, inside the object. Oops. Come out one more. Here, wrap around to, oh, for gosh sakes, what did I do? Oh, no. There. So that's a little aggressive. I'm actually just going to chop it right there. Oop. I'm going to chop it right there. Nah. Just do what I was going to do. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, and I'll make a cut here. Now you don't have to, you know, making the cuts is just sort of part of the process, right? There's nothing saying you got to go and unfold everything every time, but so I'm going to chop off all these little arm bits, okay? Okay, so now I'm just basically separating and saying, okay, this is a tube, this is a, ooh, geez, that's a tube, etc. Right? So then I'm gonna slice along here to here. So I'm just setting up my seams. I'm not going in and bothering with the unwrap right now. There's you know, you can do that at any time. There's no reason to sweat it, you know, at this stage, you know, yeah, in fact, it'll just sort of break your workflow, you know. So, okay, so I'll cut along there. That's pretty good. And let's see. Come down to here to hide that seam. Cut. Then cut. That's not a cut. Cut in there. Okay. All right. Oops, here too. Cut. It's a good thing to do while watching a movie on the side or something like that. Like it's kind of mindless, but it you know, there are worse things. Okay. So and then okay. Oops. And I could potentially have gotten away without cutting off these, but since they're so long and spindly, I'm actually gonna like these smaller ones. You probably don't need to cut off, but these long spindly ones you would, because you know it would allow them to you know, sort of sneak into a part of the map a little bit easier. Meaning, like, you know, when it goes to pack up all those UVs, you know, all the shells. So it would, you know. It wouldn't have to, you know, find a weird place for, you know, this giant thing with these big spindly things. By chopping them off, you create a new part that can kind of be tucked anywhere, okay? I'm going to chop this thing off. Okay. I'm going to split it along here so that it can sort of splay open, okay? And do the same thing for all these ones that I cut off here. So So let me do one of these. Let me do one of these pieces first. Okay, unfold, and I'll show you what I mean. Why you put these seams in there. So if I take this, okay, so this is that long thumb here, right? If I say unfold to this, see what I get there? Like, see how these faces are all sort of like bunched up, and in fact they get really, really tiny. And if I put turn on my stress map right here, you see how they're red. Okay, that means that, you know, there's not enough of the map being used to you know, to properly you know, allow you to paint this area, right? And that's why, you know, this is why you put those seams you put those seams that run along the object like so. Okay, that's why you cut this, so now it can unwrap it here, because other than that, all it can do is sort of try and splay it out here, right? So now if I hit that, now it can, oh, that's right, it's mirrored on the other side. So there, yeah, so I'm picking up both of them on both sides, but now you see I'm getting, you know, I'm just getting a little bit of pink versus, you know, all this red. That's a big warning sign of like you're doing something wrong. So this is why you put those seams along there. Like otherwise it's gonna, you know, you want to be able, it needs to be able to wrap it like so, you know, it needs to be able to wrap it around and have a seam. So by telling it where you want your seam, you'll get a nice cut. Okay. Goes all the way out to there, right? Especially this piece right there. I mean, if I didn't cut that, this thing would not be able to unwrap itself. Okay. Okay, so we'll come out there. I'll try and get that last one cut. Okay, so I need to do this one too. So there, okay, so cut. So you see where all this white is, you know, so you see where all these are, and if I go into my shell mode, okay, you know, so I got, this is a piece, this is a piece, this is a piece, these guys are all their own pieces, same with these long bits, okay. But like I said, you see, you know, you see all kinds of stress here. You don't see it on the neck because we already unwrapped that. This should be ready to go, I think. Yep, because we've got a nice seam that runs along there. So I'm going to do this one. So unfold. And there we go. So that whole chunk is unfolded with a little bit of pink pieces right where these meet. Not too bad, but mostly white. You know, you want either mostly white or maybe a little bit of blue, and you'd be able to, you know, paint on that nicely. So I'm going to move on to some of these other pieces. Okay.
Does it look like there's more than one there because there is more than one because it's mirrored to the
Yeah, because it's mirrored. It's selecting them both on top of each other. I can't.
Should we like when we're doing that step, should we
See?
do it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
So you know, until you're done, it doesn't matter, and you know, until you need to start you know, trying to pack these in there, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so boom, unfold, pretty nice. I'll just see, and then this one, unfold, it's pretty good. Unfold. I don't know if I did that. Unfold. There we go. Oh, just do all of them at once. There we go. Okay, so this one I screwed up. Obviously, I didn't put a seam in there, and you see what's going on. So this is it, and this is what it looks like, because, you know, once again, you can see if you come in here, this is the end, and all it can do is try and splay them out from the end here. So if I come back and I put a seam, so it has a place to cut along an object like this. That's it. Okay. And I grab the shell again. Unfold, no problem. You know, everything's all exposed and perfect. So that's all you're doing. I mean, you just, you know, for an object like this, it's pretty much just the easiest way to go is to come in and do it by hand. Just tear it apart. So we'll cut the tail off. Maybe hide the seam along the. Wow, that's a long tail. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Hide the seam along there. Cut. Grab the grab the shell, unfold. Looks good. You know, a little bit of, you know, it's all white. It looks good. So, you know, you're just sort of hunting down the pieces that you didn't do. So I'll just continue on. So here's the leg. We'll chop the leg off. Oop. Sometimes you do have to take a kind of a weird route, but ooh. Tell you what, let's go out here. Oh. Here, here, to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. I'll just chop all this off. Okay, so cut, and then we will put a seam along the inside, and maybe right here even, like this. So you're gonna want to chop this off. So let's see if we can see what we got to do for that. So I'll just chop it off, and then pre-seam it in the inside here. Okay, cut, 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 cut. There. So that's continuing on down the inside of the leg. Here to there. All right, now we're down to the foot. Cut. So we've chopped off the little dew claw area here. You could choose on whether you want to skip this or not. I think I'm going to skip it. And then the foot. No, I mean the foot we could potentially. Let's see. Foot I think I'll do is I'll cut the sole off, and then just do those. Do these separately. That way the sole will be able to spread itself off, and then the top will also be able to spread itself off. So we made our cuts. Okay, so now we have our pieces there, so we'll go back into shell, see what we get. So grab the new shells, unfold. Okay, grab and just basically inspect, so a little, see, so we're getting some stretching here in the knee, because it is sort of its own little doodad, right? So you could potentially cut that off, and that might behave better. For now, I'll just leave it. Other than that, down here, this is a little stressy, but it's not too bad. That looks great. Bottom of the foot looks great, So, and then now that we've done all this, we're left over with the body that we haven't done. So I'm just going to continue my my cut along the bottom here, and grab that shell, unfold it. And that looks pretty decent. So it created some voids in here, but hopefully it'll take some of these extra pieces. When it goes to pack all this stuff together, it should use these pieces for something else. So okay, so it's looking pretty decent. So everywhere but the top of the head, we've done the tail, we've done the arms. These are all looking decent. Okay, so we come up to the head and we start tearing that apart. So with that bonus add-in thing, you still have to do this. You still have to go in and give it all these, where you want all these things, these cuts to be made. So it does save time, but you still have to do this stuff. There's just no way around. There's nothing that makes this any easier, really. So I'm going to cut off the horns. Okay. I'm going to guess that it's this one, and I would be wrong. Okay. Maybe it's this one. There we go. And another cut there. So now I have a separate object out of that. Out of both of those. Unfold. Should get rid of the stress. Got rid of all the stress that's going on up here. All right. Now the head's obviously going to be a different scenario. So usually the best method for these, just like we did with the human head model, is that cut the mouth out separately so that you can sort of deal with that. You can deal with that on its own. So Oops. Okay, like so. Come down here, 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 to there. Whoop. Cut. So that makes this whole sort of this mouth, you know, pouch area or whatever. The tongue's a separate object in this model, so we don't have to worry about that. So I grab that, unfold, go find it. There it is. So we got some stress back here in the like as it goes down the throat, right? So let's see. So what you're looking at here, you know, it's so we're sort of looking at a cone that has an end, if you kind of think about it, with, you know, with some missing chunks here. So if we sliced sort of down through the middle here, you could splay those areas out. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to go edge all the way to the back of the throat, like so. Oops. There we go. Oh, yeah, close enough. Okay, I'm going to cut that. So now I'll have top of the mouth and bottom of the mouth, which should allow these two. So here's what it looked like before. Unfold it, and we got rid of our stress by you know, chopping it off there. So this is still the back of the throat, and there's a little, you know, it gets really dense down there for some reason. So we'll undo the other side. So that allows that whole area to unfold because we cut it and we didn't sort of try and force it into, you know, being mapped as like a little tube there. Okay. So now what we're left with is the head, and so the things that are going to be hanging out here are going to be these horns of the bastard. There we go. At the front of the head, cut those off and put a seam in through here, so that, like I said, we essentially end up with a cone. We're not going to worry about the rest of the head separately. So we already tore the horns off. This area might become a problem. Well, let's just do it and find out what we get. You know, that's the nice thing is you can just sort of keep trying stuff. You know, there's no stopping. So there's a lot there, so it's trying to unfold. Okay, so what I got out of that is kind of a big mess. So so let's see. So probably the best way, so here's like where we cut the mouth out, here's where we cut the horns out, and these are the front horns, right? So we're getting stress back here, okay, where it meets the horns, like in through this area. So, you know, to alleviate that, if we went in here, we could probably get away with, all we need is sort of is just maybe one or two seams to allow it to break out a little better. So I'm going to chop this area off here. So that gives us like a top of the head. But it should... Oops, what happened? Oh, I see. Well, let's see what it does. So grab it, unfold it. Whew. Takes some doing when it gets dense. Okay, so that alleviated a little bit of it, but it kind of shifted it more towards the front. So I think a good way to go about this would be to cut the top of the head from the bottom of the head so that we can map along this direction and then this direction separately. So let's give that a shot. So we'll come in here, we'll look for where we cut the mouth out. There. Continue on. Okay. Come down to here, and then out to there. We'll cut along there. So now we'll have a shell for the top of the head and a shell for the bottom of the head. All right, unfold. There we go. That's getting better. Unfold that. There. Now, I mean, it looks better. You know, whenever you see, it's like, you know, it gets easier to see where you're going to have problems when you sort of zoom out. When you look at your map, when you look at your unfolded pieces, right, and you see these kind of things, these kind of dense chunks. You know, like if you're out here and you can't see all your polygons, you're probably not going to be able to paint these areas, right? So you're probably going to have problems. You know, so it's best just to sort of, you know, find those and fix them, you know. And that's what this heat map thing is for, right? So if I come in, so that's the top. It's probably these guys that I thought was going to be a problem. So we'll chop those off and let them do their thing. So we'll go from here to there. Now we'll go up and around, down here. Nope, too far. Now I'll come up here. To there. So yeah, so we're just chopping off this other horn cluster. That's up there. There, okay. So, not exactly graceful, but there we go. Okay. So this should get rid of some of that, some of these problems, because now I can put a seam in there. Okay, so cut, and I'm gonna cut down here to there, so that this can splay open, and I'm gonna cut from there to there. It's kind of like being a butcher. So shell, unfold, a little bit better except for these tippy tops here, but let's see, if we really wanted to get nuts, we could just, so we're just going to chop this whole piece in half, which will allow it to move out, get some real estate. Okay. Boom. Okay. Cut. Shell. Unfold. There we go. And then unfold this chunk. There we go. And that's good. So that'll alleviate that. You could probably chop this rhino horn part up here off. Split it somewhere, like along the back. So. Okay, cut. Shell. Unfold. Okay. So that's all of that, you know, that's in a nutshell all of this guy within reason, you know, like I said, these are not perfect, so you could chop those off and let those, oh, what the heck, I'll do it too. I'll take care of it. So we take this and we put a seam that runs along here. Okay. So that'll allow this whole little bit to unfold and sort of alleviate some of the problems, and you can actually take up that space there. There we go. So we got rid of that. So we have no red. You know, we have a little bit of pinky color and a little bit of blue. You know, blue, like I said, a little bit of blue is not too bad, and a little bit of pink is not bad either. So this is, you know, that's you know, this could work for this object. Then the next step obviously would be to get it laid out. So we come over to our you know, layout tab and just let it take a swing at it right out of the gate. Not too bad. So remember, if you up your iterations, it'll try harder to make things pack together better, right? So I'm gonna sorry, it's the arrange in the UV toolkit, arrange and layout, right down there, layout, and then shift will bring up the options for it. Shift will bring up the options for any of these things. Okay, so if we turn on our we turn off our heat map and we turn on our checkerboards, we'll start to see, you know, how we did. Remember, you know, you're trying to get pretty much even checkerboards all over the place, and it's not bad. So in the face, no, the face, no, it's. So I'm gonna actually take I'm gonna take all the pieces, all the shells from the head. Okay, so here's that one. There's that one. Okay. And like I said, you know, more than likely, you're going to want to be able to paint the heck out of these areas, right? So you know, I'm going to take them all and I'm going to make them bigger so that they're taking up more real estate on the map, so that I can, you know, I can paint it with more detail, right? Because, you know, some of these pieces are going to be taking up more than you'd want, unless you're going to get way in there. And overall, it's, like I said, it's not too bad. So that's a leg. It's not bad. Another leg. Neck maybe is not quite big enough, so we'll bring that up a little bit. Okay. So we have dense checkerboard in the face, all these areas, so that we can, you know, like I said, we can paint a whole lot in here. Fairly dense here, reasonably dense out on the arms. The arms maybe could come up a little bit. Still, whoa, still a little, there we go. They could use to be a little denser, there we go. Body's not too bad, and then I'm not going to worry too much about some of these other areas. The other thing I see was when I get in here is the eyes. Notice if I turn my stress map back on, notice how small the eye area gets right here. I think that's the eye area, right? Is that the nose? Where am I? Okay, yeah. So notice there's a little, so, you know, if you want to get in here and paint on the eye, symmetry on, you know, if you really want to be able to paint a nice eyelid, you know, like this stress that's happening on the inside here might be a little much, so I'm actually going to cut that off too, and oops, cut one of its, cut here. Where'd my cuts go? Cut, so, cut. Ooh, what did I do? From there, oops, there to there. Cut, which gives me this shell right here, but if we watch it and I unfold it, there we go. So now we have something more to sort of paint on there. You know how lots of times they always want to get nice and close on eyeballs and things like that. So, you know, by letting that area breathe a little more, by chopping it out of there, and then that actually allows this area to be on the other part of the other shell to take up more that space too. So you can kind of, you know, let that get a little more space and let your eyelids get a little bit of space. Okay. So I'm gonna turn off my stress map again. Go back to here. We're looking pretty good. So I'm gonna just allow it to repack it again, or layout. Sorry, they call it layout here. So you see what I'm saying? The bigger the shells, the bigger the chunks of the shells, the more real estate, obviously, they're going to take up and also need to be fit in. Like this tail, you know, this tail has got to be fit in and take, you know, a ton of weird space, right? So, I mean, you know, if you really wanted to, you could just cut this so that you end up with two shells. Now it would be easier for it to pack that, arrange the, there we go. So now it's using more because the tail can be here and here instead of one giant thing that's taking up all this space, right? So, okay, so you can just make some final changes if you wanted to. You know, putting it in place and just looking things over and making sure that, you know, you're getting a decent coverage. You know, and it's all relative. Once again, you know, since we have a lot of real estate here on this object, you know, you are... you know, you're not going to get teeny tiny squares because it's, you know, it's all, once again, it's all relative, you know, like actually these, like the horns maybe could actually use a little more real estate. Okay. Layout. So, and you want to get this right. You want to make sure that you go through this, and because once again, whenever you're done with this and you start painting a texture, this is the layout. It is not, you can't change it, because if you change it, that means that, you know, if you start painting a texture, you know, and you want to move these, you have to move the texture too, and, you know, doing that's going to be next to impossible with, you know, something like this. So you want to make sure you get this step right, because it's going to stay that way, and there's very little changing it. You know, the only thing that you can do is, you know, move things around a little bit, as long as you're also, like I said, moving the texture. You know, because you can see what's happening here. It's like, you know, as I move this, it's moving the texture underneath it. So, you know, it's worth it to spend a little extra time and making sure you're using all the pieces, all the real estate that you can, because even though the arranger does a nice job, it's not perfect. So, you know, you see I got some areas here that could use some more work. Okay, so that's basically it. So, you know, any organic object like this can be, you know, chopped apart, and, you know, this is how you would prep such a thing. There are, you know, you could go in and sew some of these other pieces to, you know, back together. You know, we did cut and sew, like, you know, you could sew, like, if I went here and I went from here to there to, here to there to there to there to there. Since I cut the soles of the feet off, you know, you could stitch together those pieces, right? And that'll snap that, you know, here's what it looked like before. So I grabbed that seam here, and then, so there's a shell that's the soles of the feet, and then there's the leg, right? Well, it could fit in right here, and that way you wouldn't have a seam there. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do here. So stitch, and then grab the shell, and unfold it again. And that's not, you know, that's not too bad. You know, and that, like, that eliminates that seam that's right there, but we still have decent coverage. Everything's all, like, nicely splayed out and everything here, right? So you can look for those places to save, you know, to save yourself seaming things. But, you know, lots of times it's just nice to keep them that way. You know, like, you could probably find a way to put that back on. But it's, you know, it's better to sort of expose all your pieces properly than have less seams, because as you saw, like, Mudbox handles it pretty decently. It handles going, you know, painting across seams pretty nicely, and most 3D painting programs do, right? So it's more about, like, hiding your seams in, you know, like in the inseam here, or, you know, between the toes, or between, you know, legs, or between fingers and stuff. You know, chopping areas like this out at the lip area where it, you know, kind of has a natural, you know, change anyways, and just getting rid of those stress areas, you know. So if I dump this into Mudbox, it should reasonably, hopefully it won't complain too much. No. And I could paint it. Send as new scene. Sure, whatever. No. Yeah, see, so let's see. So it's complaining about one of them. Oh. Oh, crap. There it was. So I can paint both. And of course I have a giant brush as usual. Oh, wow. I do. Red off, stencil off, stamp off, paint. Maybe it's too small. 3. Oh, yeah, it's working. 0.5. So by, you know, giving myself plenty of map, I can come in and, you know, I can paint reasonably detailed stuff and all, you know, all over the place on here. You know, I'm not getting crazy stretching on anything. The red is really rough. Okay, there we go. And, you know, you could just go to town. I mean, you know, you could, all this is pretty much laid out, you know, fairly decently. So, you know, it doesn't take that long to get it right, you know, and it's in the end, it's worth it, because you can, you know, now you can sort of have fun with it. And this is only a 4K map. You know, you can create a 8,000 pixel image in here without a lot of problem. So, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you know, by you know, getting everything flattened out nicely, I can come in here and I can paint really detailed stuff. Whereas if this was all red, these textures would be stretching through the object. I mean, I could almost, you know, I could paint just about whatever I wanted on there without a lot of, you know, without a lot of problems. Okay, so let's see where that is. Whew, it's here somewhere. There it is. So we painted on both this shell right there and wherever the eyeballs ended up. Yeah, here somewhere. But okay. So anyway, so you see the, you know, the workflow of just cutting, unfolding, looking for primitives, and just keep breaking it down until it stops having stress areas, and most of it's cones. Most of it you're just looking for things that can unwrap, cones that can unwrap. These, did I say cones? Damn it. Cylinders. You're looking for cylinders all over the place, whereas these are cones, but they're essentially cylinders. And you can see how well Maya does at taking those primitives apart and unfolding them for you, so that you don't have to worry about it too much. So that's why we go in and look for all these pieces, because it's just the same. It's essentially the same thing over and over, trying to unwrap pieces that are sort of continuous, and then chopping them off, unwrapping them, chopping them off, and unwrapping them, and just getting them in a decent layout. So a person could be done this way, a moose could be done this way, a dog could be done this way. All these organic objects can be cut apart like this, and all these pieces found using those tools, unwrap and layout, or unfold, sorry. Like I said, getting things set up, and you can paint to your heart's content. So, but it also leads into something that's really cool that allows you to add so much more detail. And that another thing that we'll be talking about is, if you come into Mudbox here, okay. Oops, where am I? Wings, tongue, polysurface. Here it goes. So the deal with these, with both ZBrush and this program, Mudbox, is the ability to sculpt, right? And I think I told you this before, is that your UVs feed into this too, because so I'm gonna keep going. Let's see. Okay, so I've got 1.2, almost 1.3 million polygons here, right? So I could come in and I can resculpt this, right? And remember, you can't have an object, well, you can, but like animating an object that's this dense, 4.4 million polygons, is not, it's not practical, right? So what you can do, and we'll go through this next, is you can sculpt in a program like this and add the detail that's not there, okay. Trying to size maybe 5. So you can use all these tools to add not only color, but increase detail, right? And you can create maps, which, like I said, we will go into, right, to create all these little wrinkles and all this great stuff, okay? Including, so you can paint a bump map over here. You see how I'm adding, just basically adding, I'm trying to create, like, sort of, let's see, so we'll come under here, muscle, whoop, oh dear. So muscles and, all this crazy detail that you can add in here, right? And what you create coming out of here is what's called a displacement map. And what that does is, only at render time, so you would work with this model, okay, meaning this actually fairly light model, right? So you would animate with this, but come render time, it would sort of pull this model out and do all this extra great detail stuff that I'm adding in here. Like, if like you see how, like, these horns, somebody didn't sort of model how these horns go together. What's your problem? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, let's go again. So I'm adding another level of detail here. Okay. Okay, so you see what I'm doing here. So I'm actually sculpting the surface, right? And if I turn on display, we'll go through this like next week. You see what I'm actually working with. You see how much denser this object is, okay? So this is being subdivided right here in Mudbox, right? But like I said, you wouldn't render with this, or no, sorry, you would render with this, but you wouldn't animate with this. So it would allow you to put almost an infinite amount of detail in here, render it out as maps that then do all this extra cool stuff, like I said, only at render time, right? And that's what we'll go through next. So But having good UVs is the only way that you're going to be able to successfully do this kind of painting and add in, you know, all these details, right? Because it needs good UVs to be able to then feed into the displacement stuff, which, like I said, we'll go through next week. But you see how cool this is, how they get those models. So, you know, so you have this trick, but you also can add a bump map. So I could actually be painting like really super hyper detailed stuff in the bump map, and then doing this painting stuff, this sculpting stuff on top. Okay. So there we go. So you see how the rest of it's really smooth, and I'm adding in all this great cool detail using these sculpting things. So this is how these things are made, you know. It's like when you see a dragon like this. This is how you would do that. So, you know, you combine color, you combine this kind of mapping, and you combine bump mapping, and you get a really nice detailed object. So, okay.
What size are you with that sculpt brush?
I'm at 5. Yeah. So this one is actually kind of using a decent size. Yeah. And that's just with a crappy green surface. Like if you know, if you came in here and you had a nice, like, I don't know why it's choosing this green. Default material, unwrap shader. Oops. So yeah, okay. So anyway, so what we're today, you know, what we're covering today is you know, the using different UV sets to control different textures that you put on your objects, so you can do layering, mixed mapping or mixed surface mapping, so that you can use different surfaces on the same object without having to sort of break it apart, or, you know, when that's not possible, you know, lots of times that's not even possible. So you know, that's available to you. You know, like the Lego guy would have been a fairly decent example of why you would want to use this, right? You could have thrown a plastic surface on the whole body, but then the decals that we put on there could have a different surface quality to them, you know, and they would just be sort of separate, and you could swap them out and things like that. You know, we were just doing texture painting, so you know, it's not you know, a big deal, but that would be a good usage for that kind of thing, where you're just decaling on, putting a decal on something, you know. So you have one surface, and then you have another surface that's the paint or whatever it might be. So that's basically all I wanted to cover today. Yeah, that's basically it. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. I think I'm going to keep playing with Mudbox, though. I forgot the outro.